The Wildhammers were one of the three great dwarven clans in the years preceding the War of the Three Hammers, though they were arguably the weakest of the three. While the Bronzebeards formed the bulk of Ironforge's military and mercantile classes, and the Dark Irons held control over the kingdom's richest ore deposits, the Wildhammers lived in the hills and slopes outside Ironforge and struggled to gain more sway with High King Modimus Anvilmar. They were, however, known for their adept and resilient mountaineers, and the new city they established following the first phase of the war, Grimbatol, soon came to rival Ironforge itself in scope and prestige. After the war and the cursing of their capital by the Dark Iron Thane's wife Modgood, the Bronzebeards invited the Wildhammers back into Ironforge, but High Thane Cardros Wildhammer refused out of pride. Instead, though rivalries continued, as a gesture of friendship between the two clans, the Wildhammers and Bronzebeards jointly built the Fandel Span and, after the deaths of High Thane's Cardros and Modorn Bronzebeard, their sons also commissioned two statues in Loch Modan, metaphorically standing watch over the border with Dark Iron territories. The Wildhammers are the least united of the three dwarven clans, being a highly free-spirited people. Following the War of the Three Hammers, as the Wildhammers did not want to dwell in their cursed former capital of Grimbatol, High Thane Cardros Wildhammer led his people north, settling in the hinterlands, but a portion settled instead in the highlands surrounding Grimbatol, the future Twilight Highlands. Before the Cataclysm, there was very little contact between the Hinterlands Wildhammers and the Highlands ones, and Curdran Wildhammer called the latter the quote, Old Wildhammer clans and the quote, Lost Wildhammer clans. End quote. The Highlands clans were also disunited among themselves until Cataclysm, though they did have common enemies in the Dragonmaw Orcs and the Old as well as New Horde. Despite their isolation from each other, within World of Warcraft, both the Hinterlands and the Twilight Highlands dwarves are referred to as Wildhammer dwarves, sometimes confusingly so. For instance, it's been stated that the Wildhammer dwarves, unspecified which ones or if both, trained their griffins by sending them out to hunt rattlesnakes in the Twilight Highlands, which would be rather odd to do for the Hinterlands dwarves. The original location of the Wildhammer dwarves took some time to define exactly within Warcraft. Originally, in Warcraft 2, they were described as the Dwarven Griffin Riders of Northuron, a region stated to be somewhere in the continent of Lordaeron beyond even the borders of Quel'Thalas. Later on, Day of the Dragon states their homeland as the Aerie Peaks, also somewhere beyond the borders of Quel'Thalas. Their capital of Aerie Peak was finally coined in Warcraft 3 maps and later in World of Warcraft, but the term Northuron remained ambiguous. Later, after the Wildhammer dwarves in the Twilight Highlands were introduced, the creative developers clarified that Northuron was the northernmost region of the Twilight Highlands, which had been mostly destroyed by the Cataclysm. The Wildhammers, both in the Hinterlands and in the Highlands, were very isolationist until recently, maintaining very few contacts with other cultures. As an example, though all of the nations in Lordaeron, even the High Elves, had heard of the Orcs and the conquest of Stormwind and Cosmodan, the Wildhammers only discovered them when the Orcs, guided by the Forest Trolls, trespassed on their territory in the Second War. Though afterwards they maintained ties and cooperated with the other human nations, they did not formally join the alliance until the Council of the Three Hammers was formed in Ironforge, until then only having a formal alliance with the High Elves of Quel'Danil Lodge. Similarly, the Wildhammers in the Twilight Highlands only joined the alliance after they were aided in Cataclysm by forces under Curdran Wildhammer. As it's famously known, the Wildhammers share a strong bond with griffins, riding upon them in battle and armed with their boomerang-like stormhammers. However, the bond between a Wildhammer dwarf and their griffin is more one of friendship, with both sides caring for one another in a mutual partnership. As a result, before the Second War, the Wildhammers were very reluctant to hand out griffins or train others in their use. Notably, Stormwind had its own aviary, and Medivh was also loaned 2 griffins, but these were stated to be rare exceptions. Presently, due to their stronger bonds with the Alliance, individual Wildhammers have also taught their allies how to raise, train, and ride their own griffins, not necessarily native to the hinterlands. For instance, Ironforge's griffins are stated to be well suited to the heat of the city's forge, unlike the Wildhammer ones. Both the Hinterlands Wildhammers as well as the Highlands ones have befriended griffins, a process which began after the War of the Free Hammers and took many years. Griffins are an essential part of both cultures, with, for instance, griffin feathers being common ornaments and Wildhammer dwarves usually being buried alongside their companions. In spite of their vastly different lifestyle from their Ironforge and Grim Batol days, the Wildhammers nevertheless continue to be talented in blacksmithing and stoneworking. Though they now dread living underground due to Modgod's curse, they continue to build impressive stone structures and, as I've stated, jointly constructed the Fandral Span and the statues of Kardros Wildhammer and Madarn Bronzebeards with the Bronzebeards. Their most well-known blacksmithing work is their infamous storm hammers, though Wildhammer warriors also carry large battle axes for close-quarters combat. Notably, the Twilight's hammer enslaved several Wildhammer smiths in their incursion into the Highlands and forced them to craft the Hammer of Twilight, Cho'Gall's personal weapon, before killing them. As I've stated, the Wildhammer clans in the Highlands were also disunited among themselves, with feuds and conflicts being common. Other than their shared enmity with the Dragonmaw orcs and with the Horde in general though, these clans also shared common cultural ties which helped unite them in the Cataclysm. For one, there was a Grand Shaman of all these clans who also resided in Kurthaven, the spiritual center of the Wildhammer Dwarves, where the clans come in peace and their heroes are buried. Both the Hinterlands and the Twilight Highlands Wildhammers also share a strong connection with the natural world, a tradition which dates back to before the War of the Free Hammers, when they were considered uncouth by the Bronzebeards. Unfortunately, however, it's been stated that the Burning Legion conquered the Twilight Highlands during their invasion and scattered the local Wildhammer clans.